I'm doing this intro during a classic Toronto thunderstorm. I'm hoping it's atmospheric and not annoying. If you just put this episode on and you're walking around and you're like, I didn't think it was raining, it's not raining. Well, actually, it might be raining, but what you hear right now is not the rain that is falling. I'm sorry. Love this band. It's great conversation. Very happy to have spoken. And make sure you seek out their music. Bats of Paradise are the best. Phil is the best. Thank you very much. I'm Alex Southey, and this is Your Worst Song. Acts or bands, or I don't know if you would say bands versus bicyclops. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce that.
Clubs.
Bicyclops, just quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Which is more, for the people who don't know, more electronic, atmospheric kind of stuff versus Bats of Paradise, which is more, I don't know what you would say, I guess, certainly alternative rock, but that's such a broad, alternative rock, indie rock, those are both so broad. Yeah. How would you describe it? I'm very curious.
Yeah. I mean, I think you hit on the difficulty we always have. Those are the terms we use pretty much, but yeah, like guitar based sort of 90s inspired rock.
Yeah.
Like fairly like vocal forward, I guess, is one way to describe it. But yeah, the three.
That's a good way of describing it. I would say too, I'll sometimes hesitate from saying this because I don't know how people feel about I don't even know what I would like. Anyway, whatever. To me, it sounds like music, the good music that I would have heard on like the OC personally, some of it. And I know that doesn't carry a ton of like cool kid cachet, but at the time, for people who don't know, they did actually have cool bands on and sort of broke some bands. But I just feel like there's yes, it's totally 90s inspired alternative rock. Absolutely. You can hear all of that stuff in it. Everything from like Pavement to, Weezer to the tentpole 90s stuff that we would know. But there is like a slightly more dramatic, could be on a soundtrack kind of thing. I hesitate from saying theatrical because that makes me think Queen or Elton John or something. But I guess cinematic, not theatrical.
Yeah.
How does that hit you? Do you think that there's that third element to it? Third element being the cinematic one?
I would say so for sure. It's something
like your stuff is written to like a music video. I know it's not, but that's how it sounds to me.
Yeah. Well, that's cool to hear. Yeah, I mean, I think like something we talk about is there's always like a little bit of a catharsis that we're going for, and I think that's interesting because I think Mark and I are I'll speak for myself, a fairly reserved person in general, but for whatever reason in the music it's like we really want to swing for the fences, I guess.
Yeah, it comes out. I would say, yeah, you more come across as soft-spoken people when I met you in real life, which is such a bizarre thing to say. This is real life, but you know what I mean. Kids at home listening. Yeah, you guys are soft-spoken and that kind of thing, but for sure, cathartic is a really good way of putting it. I think that's what I mean by there's a culmination in a lot of your songs of the energy that you're like brewing throughout. That's what I feel about Bats of Paradise. It's wielding that energy, whereas a lot of 90s rock, truly as good as it is, kind of goes intro, verse, chorus, maybe solo, outro. They don't necessarily also have it plotted the way we know movie structure.
Hmm. That's interesting. I don't think we've ever thought about it like in terms of a movie structure, but it's definitely something maybe maybe even more than we should. We're kind of like, well, we could do another verse, but maybe won't. We'll like thing instead.
Well, that's where your restraint comes in, maybe, is the editing process. Maybe that's where
Mhm.
you guys are restrained people, and maybe that's where you exercise that. But yeah, to me, I don't literally mean movie structure, but I guess I just mean if we can all picture the graph that's age old, of sort of begins at the bottom left and rises up, and then there's maybe a little break a little bit, and then there's a higher rise near the end. I feel like that's the case with the energy with not all of your songs, because I think that would then be put you into AC/DC category, where it's all kind of sounding this is like the second time I think I've shat on AC/DC on this podcast in however many episodes that aren't even out, and it's problematic. Come at me, uh, little men.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I like that you don't do that completely. You there's like a rise and fall. There's an ebb and flow of energy.
Hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will say, like, um, it's something we think about too. Like, we don't mean to be um, too like if it's the kind of song that just needs a verse chorus. I hope we will have like the wisdom to just own that too, because it's definitely a perfectly legitimate thing, and like we don't always have to be like.
Oh, I would love to get into this, because this is sort of sometimes the meat of what past guests have considered, like why it's a worst song that they brought, right? They think, oh, it's not complicated enough, or it's too complicated, or something like that. There's this weird thing that we as musicians get into, where especially if we're fans of slightly more not totally mainstream stuff, sometimes some esoteric stuff, we feel a little bit uncomfortable if things adhere to the song structure we all know too often, too many times. And yet, like you said, I think there's real wisdom in knowing, like, even just like speaking in a instrumental way, you know what? Maybe the drums don't need to be Keith Moon level weird, or Neil Peart level crazy. They can be just serving the song, just be bass and snare or whatever. And it seems like that's what you're saying. You need to retain some of that. It can't all be indie rock, the OC Rush, as much as I would actually like to listen to that.
Uh, I guess one thing too, maybe at least for me, when we're writing stuff, is like when things are in sort of that sketch phase, where it's like, you have it. We'll call this section A and this section B, and this section A again, or
Mm-hmm.
A star, like A prime or something, because it's like slightly there's a little twist on it. When you think of it in that sort of very zoomed out, like building block level, you
Mm-hmm.
can think like, oh, like we're doing this again already, but I don't think that's how people really listen to music. Nobody is like categorizing song sections, or I won't say no one. Few people are categorizing.
Yeah. People who are up at like 3 a.m. filling out Genius website lyric stuff, they are. No, I know exactly what you mean. And I was talking about this with somebody else. Totally. It's our perception as the music creators is so different to the listeners. They hear it as one whole thing. And I've used this forgive me, listeners, I've used this before, but it's like a painting. When you and I go up and see a painting, we go, oh yeah, they were trying to, this is called cat, and it looks like a cat, and they nailed that. And the artist is thinking, oh, the brushstroke on the left eyebrow of the cat, I don't know if it, I was trying to make its eye cock up in a little Mona Lisa way. You're right. Like, is that how you feel too?
I think so. Like your perspective is such a um funny thing when like throughout this process, and
Unfortunately, not funny, haha, more funny eyebrow raise.
yeah, funny, sometimes uh exhausting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that goes all the way through the writing and production and everything, and just like, and this is, maybe I'm sort of biased to think this way because I have a psychology background, but it's kind of like um I guess it's helpful, or the more you do this, maybe the more you can kind of take a step back and realize when you're maybe burnt out, and you need to take a step away from the thing, or Even like you just can't hear right anymore because you've been listening to the mix for 6 hours straight.
Yep.
Probably go to bed. Um,
Yeah,
so
you're in the forest, or no, what is it? You're only seeing the trees, you can't see the forest. That idea about perspective, right? And that's a real thing, isn't it? Haven't there been studies that have proven that, like, yeah, if you listen to your own mix, let's say, or your own whatever that you're editing over time, you fully do lose perspective. It's not like it's not country wisdom just passed down amongst people. It's provable now.
I mean, your actual, that's my understanding, is like your the actual like mechanism in your ear actually changes over time, right? I
Right,
mean,
right.
you can't like listen critically for too long. And again, I'm not a mixer, like professional mixer or anything, but it's just mixing my own stuff and doing a little bit of having a little bit of like a sensation and perception
Hmm.
background. It's been interesting to notice those things in myself, and even knowing them like on a conceptual level, like, oh, I know this happens. There's a part of me that's always like, nah, but I can beat it. I
Absolutely.
know how to EQ the snare, even.
Even though it's like moving goalposts basically once your ear begins to change. You know what's funny about that too is I feel like if you talk to people about the idea that your eyes get tired over the day, nobody would question that. They'd all go, yeah, yeah, no, of course. I get that. You need to rest your eyes. That's a common thing. Nobody ever says I need to go rest my ears, other than probably audio engineers.
Yeah.
I think regular people who listen to music, maybe they'll go, oh, I'm getting a bit of a headache, and they chalk it up to the amount of noise.
Yeah.
But this is like one more specific level forward where
Yeah.
it's you truly lose your center over time as you listen to stuff, you know? Well, speaking of that, we should probably get into your music. I feel, well, you alluded to this a bit in our conversation before, but publicly, have you been part of bands other than Bats of Paradise and your solo stuff?
Not really. So, I mean, my sort of formative musical experiences were in Newmarket, in high school. So
Woo!
playing in bands, and um, there was a little rehearsal studio, which was kind of, it had a venue in the front called the Jam Spot. Shout out to the Jam Spot.
All right, we'll have a little jam spot noise.
I think they're, yeah, no longer around.
Oh,
Um,
we'll
it
have a little not around noise.
they were like really the hub of the music scene, in like the all ages music scene,
Hmm.
especially for kids in Newmarket. And so yeah, so I had a band, and actually Mark, who is I'm representing tonight, he's the other.
Representing.
um, he was also in a band, and we sort of I filled in their band a couple times, and just that's how we kind of learned how to do this whole thing. And then yeah, once we all kind of you know after, that like period after high school where it's like, what's going to happen with the band? um
Yeah.
and then we all went our separate ways, and then I
Oh, and then you're like, oh, that's what's going to happen with the band.
it's unfortunately probably the rule rather than
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
exception.
5 years later, someone has a kid. Someone is just become a lawyer who's defending someone, all that stuff. It's crazy how life
Yeah, it
follows up.
really happens. But so yeah, and then I was looking for that kind of outlet, and that's when Bicyclops came into being as a.
Bicyclops. I have really fucked that up in my head all of this time that I kept going Bicyclops.
Oh, it's all good. I
Bicyclops.
get that
I
a lot.
like that. It's a lot more bicycle forward than Cyclops forward.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but that is, yeah, that's the portmanteau.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It was just like a SoundCloud page that I put up.
Yeah, but that doesn't answer how you came up with that. Who comes up with that? The Greek writer?
I don't know. I've since learned that there's a few places it shows up. Like I think in like the Yellow Submarine. I think it's one of those things that like multiple people kind
Have
of,
sort of put together.
yeah, because
Yeah, yeah.
it is kind of right there when you see it.
Do
Um,
you mean Yellow Submarine, the Beatles movie?
yeah, I think
Oh, oh.
something about a bicyclops in there. There's a Futurama episode too
Oh, wow.
called "The Bicyclops Built for Two." I know all this because it shows up when I'm trying to.
Promote stuff or whatever. Yeah. That's, you should just take credit. Be like, yes, this is my music. I also wrote this episode. And the Beatles are my grandfathers. Yeah. So yeah, so well, you said you yeah, how to get into this. So that stuff was it started out with SoundCloud with that, right? But well, speaking of name creation, I'm definitely curious about how you got to Bats of Paradise. Presumably that is a play on the plant. Is that correct?
But a play on like Birds of Paradise.
Yeah, which is that not a plant?
Um, Maybe is
Am
it?
I insane?
Oh, I'm familiar with
Are you thinking of the book?
well, no, because there are like like Planet Earth. They go to
Oh, so you're literally thinking of birds that live in paradise.
yeah,
Or but then bats.
but then bats, yeah. Well, so it was a long
It's a flower. Birds of paradise is a flower. I thought it was always a play on that.
but are there are actual like Birds of Paradise.
Well, there's birds of prey, right? Oh, that's a plant too.
But yeah, the Birds of Paradise. Sorry, this is a little Wikipedia
Yeah,
stuff.
both of us are looking on our laptops.
They're members of a family of a certain type of birds.
Okay, I see.
Uh,
Look, this isn't gotcha journalism. I wasn't trying to, get you here.
well, I learned something because I didn't know that it was a plant as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there
Okay, so sorry, uninterrupted. Please tell me how you came up with the band name.
Well, it's a short story. Mark came up with it.
Oh, okay.
We had sort of a shootout among several
That's
bands.
dramatic.
Um, we had a list. I cannot remember any of the other names on the list at the moment. But,
Okay.
it
Was this Head and Shoulders, I guess, one of the best ones, I guess.
I think so. Yeah, it kind of just stuck with us, I think.
Well, here's a question. Did you ever consider a single word band name? Like, do you think that was on the list?
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. Bicyclops.
Definitely there were a few. Yeah.
Yeah. So you landed on this. I love it, obviously, because I thought it's a thing to you. It's a thing that exists. I thought it was a play on whatever, but also it's very it's just good imagery. It's as simple as that, I feel like. Do you feel like, do you just like the idea that it's bats instead of birds, or did you have a preoccupation with with bats, or how does that come about? Are you Batman? Are you Bruce Wayne?
I would say I'm pro bat.
You're pro bat. Okay. This is an anti-bat podcast. I forgot. Politics, we're as left as you go. I will not hear another word about bats.
Flying mammals.
Yeah.
Have it. Yeah, it was, I think this probably didn't like come up, just maybe didn't occur to us in the moment, but I think that kind of like again, talking about music is obviously that's what we're doing, but like this idea of like catharsis in the music, but also there's kind of like a darker not quite gritty, but there's kind of like this contrast that we want there to be in our music, I would say.
Definitely. There's a lightness that I'm alluding to, I guess, just by referencing a music that would be maybe TV show like, but there's another side that's like it's like the shadow side. It's the shaded side where there's a lot more intrigue and some, ominous chord choices.
Yeah, we like to kind of go a little bit little bit dissonant sometimes, and sort of just play with that. I think that's sort of a central thing that we try to do.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad that you said that because I'm actually surprised it maybe took this long for either of us to get to that word to describe your music, because while it's incredibly melodic in a pleasing way, there are equally an amount of moments that are dissonant in a, wouldn't sound unfamiliar on a Sonic Youth album, or that's the easiest thing to grab for a noise band, but you know what I mean? Does that ring true to you?
I would say so. Yeah. Yeah.
Because there are also another band, they maybe embrace the dissonance in their motifs and melodies a little bit more than you guys, but you definitely both stray into that territory where it's essentially what I would call abstract noise rock, but it suits because it's within the context of these strongly melodic songs.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Is that
Yeah,
fair?
pretty good.
Okay, all right.
Summary. Yeah, thank you.
This is the only thing I'm good at. I have to do something like this. Uh well, so how did you guys come together to begin working on the project? I know you described a bit about how you began playing together, but I mean literally this album, how did that come to be?
So, um, Mark and I, yeah, so we had this sort of shared history in the Newmarket scene, and I think we both kind of had a mutual respect for what we were each doing, but it wasn't
Mhm.
um 20 it was 2019 actually. um so I was doing my master's at the time, and I had I needed participants basically for my research study. And I invited Mark because he had moved back into the city shortly before that, I think. And so I invited him, and then um, I was like putting the um, this like electrode cap on his head, basically, which takes like 40 minutes. You have to like individually gel all of these little holes, basically, that all the electrodes go in.
Damn.
I remember we were just talking, and we hadn't really talked in probably a few years. We hadn't had a good conversation, and we were just talking about music. And I just remember kind of saying, like, "Do you want to start a shoegaze band?" And he was like, "Yeah, I like shoegaze." We kind of like we went out for dinner after that, and got talking more and more. And then I think I was like so excited that I went home and basically wrote um, the demo for Head Like a Hornet's Nest. Um,
Really, which is now, I don't know what you would consider. I mean, that's what you led with the single, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, and it's still definitely the most in that sort of original like shoegaze sort of blueprint. Although I wouldn't say it's necessarily shoegaze. I wouldn't say.
Nor would I, but that is absolutely a strong flavor that is in the dish of
Yeah.
Bats of Paradise. That's so cool to know. I swear that's evidence of a thing science has not yet caught up to, of a some sort of chemistry that makes you create. The reason I'm saying this for people listening who haven't heard the album is not only was this the lead single, it's to me, and maybe because it was the lead single, kind of the leading first impression for your music. And so that's what people think of. And so it's so interesting that that came about right after the two of you catching up and having that uh, prolonged meeting, right? I love that idea that the song you landed on to be the representative was the one that sprung from the initial sort of meeting. And did everything follow? Like, speaking as a musician myself, sometimes you go, okay, I have enough time open in my mental horizon to plan a record. I hope I come up with enough songs. That's what I'm going to work towards. And for people, it's not just reaching the number of songs. It's also, once you write a song, you realize it can serve as a North Star to write the rest of the songs for the album around it. Was that one of these songs?
I would say,
Sorry for the longest question in the history of the universe.
oh, I totally know what you mean. Like,
Okay.
you need that one thing to kind of hang everything else on. I wouldn't want to talk it up too much because I wouldn't want to take too much
It's
credit.
the stairway to heaven of this century.
I wouldn't want to like take credit for it as kind of the defining thing because Mark is also a great songwriter and he brought ideas as well, right? So, but I
Of
think
course.
it was what got us in the room. We sort of and then he had quickly come up with some demos, some ideas, and then that's what kind of got us in the room. We got a weekly rehearsal space, and then we were meeting twice a week and sort of trying to hash out what our sound was.
So
And
how do you do that? Do you talk bands or do you play through it?
I think we probably played through it.
Mhm.
I mean, we definitely are talking constantly about things that inspire us. But um, it was the writing of this album was interesting because it was like 80% done maybe in that rehearsal studio, and then um, everybody knows what I'm going to say next. But then it was March 2020. Uh, then the last sort of part of the album was done sort of remotely, where we were sort of like we had luckily recorded some scratch tracks
Hmm.
in the rehearsal studio, or sorry, in the rehearsal space, and so we had like enough of a grid that we could sort of be trying ideas like separately, and that's where we worked on the arrangement. But I guess that doesn't really answer your question of how we wrote through it. But it was like it
No,
was a
no.
short period of like focused like 6 hours a week, um, sort of getting the ideas down, and then it was 2.5 years of sort of like refining and just like waiting for that opportunity to kind of get back for things to line up again where we could actually um you know commit it to tape, so to speak.
Well, uh, well, potentially literally because you have a cassette, if I'm not mistaken. Um,
Yeah.
you and I are the only ones fucking hawking cassettes out there. Just
No,
please.
I see them out there.
They're around, but I'll say that's the only merch that I had a friend privately message me and be like, fucking no one buys that shit, bro. I was like, whoa, geez, all right, I guess you won't.
uh,
I think it's cool. I don't know how you did it. I did mine with a bit of a like if you buy the cassette, you also get a digital version of it.
yeah,
But yeah, anyway. That's so interesting. I had one question as a follow-up about that. I think you did answer my question about how you guys wrote it, but the only thing I have a question about is if I'm not mistaken, you are the guitarist.
mhm,
He is the drummer.
mhm.
So when you say that he is providing song ideas, is he also playing guitar idea wise, but just performing wise and just recording he's doing drums?
Yeah, so yeah, Mark plays guitar as well, and sings. So I've
There
sort
you
of
go.
taken that role in the band, because he's also an exceptional drummer. So um,
It's more about who can drum, not who can do the other stuff.
partly, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's bringing full blown guitar ideas as well. Like some of the riffs, for instance, in the first song, um, were almost fully written by him,
Oh,
just
really?
a bit by me. And yeah, so it's always kind of like we call it like the broken telephone process.
Absolutely.
Kind of like he'll play it and then I'll kind of like learn it by ear, and then whatever mistakes and weirdness my sort of take has on it, that'll be kind of maybe part of it, and then we'll sort of reflect kind of back and forth. um and
No, I love that. You absolutely find, I swear, sometimes you find the song or what the song is meant to be, or the finalized version of the song after like rolling it over in your hands a bunch of times.
Yeah.
It comes from playing around with the, let's say it's a riff based song, with playing around with the riff, passing it back and forth like you are doing, and it's almost like, oh, a little bit of a string rung out when you played this that I didn't do, and now actually that sounds fucking great. So let's dig into that. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. And another thing that we did a lot and still do a lot is we'll just record everything, even if it's just on a our cell phone or whatever. And then like when when we were writing lyrics or something, it'll be like I'll have sort of come up with like sort of placeholder, just sort of
There are
nonsense.
sounds that sound like words to people who have never heard English, but
Yeah,
think about English. Yeah.
and then you sort of do that like you know those like bad lip reading videos. It's kind of like that, but with you're trying to put words on it, and so then we kind of do that back and forth sometimes, and just
100%. You end up hearing like, oh, I know that's not what I was saying, but it amounts to hearing that, and let's go in that direction. It's the same as the music thing.
and sometimes the terrible quality of like a completely just blown out cell phone recording can
It
actually,
creates harmonics or something where you hear new ideas.
yeah.
It's absolutely bizarre and fantastic. Thank you, Tim Cook. Uh, well, I feel like it's been over 30 minutes. Fuck my life. I should begin with with some structure. Best gig or worst gig is usually where we have the first fork in the road. So what are you thinking?
um I'll start with the worst gig, although maybe
Fantastic.
yeah, it's all sort of goes back to that weird period in
When
high,
you were finding, oh, high school, go ahead.
like because like I took a long time off from performing and like thankfully as an adult most of the shows that I played have been very cool. So it's the ones that come to mind, like the messiness is all in that sort of learning the ropes period. um So like the worst gig that comes to mind is not well the worst gig was one that actually just didn't happen um because so basically I had that high school band. We played together for like 5 years, and like I said, we were all sort of facing that like end of high school. um what are we going to do? Like we should have like a final send off basically.
Oh, I feel like that's already more organized than most high school boys are about things. Normally be like, cool, yeah, I'll see you soon. And then you know you're not going to see each other for like 5 years.
I think there was a band from Toronto who reached out to us because they wanted to have a show at this jam spot.
This is at the time.
This is at the time, yeah,
Okay, yeah.
over a decade ago. Um, they so it was, like when you grow up in Newmarket and it's like, oh, a Toronto band, like, are you kidding? That's
Oh, absolutely. Well, for people who don't know, although we've talked about on the podcast now a little bit of GTA and that kind of thing, describe Newmarket, especially 10 years ago, for people who don't know Newmarket.
yeah, I mean, if you
An
just
elevator pitch of Newmarket.
I mean, it's a nice place, but it's sort of towards the north end of like the sprawl, I would say. It's right kind of the last like big uh big small city you get to before you hit Lake Simcoe. Um, it's like 90,000 people, I think. And yeah, the music venues, as I mentioned, were limited.
I would say using the word venue is already, you can tell you're from there because you're giving it way too much slack.
Yeah, there was a bar, I think, called like the Gray Goat or something, which we were not allowed to.
That sounds fantastic to Tolkien right there. That's
It was uh,
no.
it's yeah. I don't want to slander somewhere I've never been. I've just heard things.
Okay, my bad.
I think it was the kind of place that like
Dateline knows big fans of that program over here, and for that reason, they've given us another inside scoop. This time, the question at hand is, can you really tell by the way he uses his walk? Women like him, and he cannot chat due to time constraints. The answer might surprise you.
I think it was the kind of place that like wanted to hear originals written by teenagers.
It is not the kind of place that wanted to hear that.
No.
Yeah.
So it really was just kind of that jam spot place. There was like a cafe that sort of ran like semi kind of gray area. I don't think they were like zoned. They were kind of like in a residential area, and they got shut down all the time. So there was that place, and then there was the jam spot. But this band reached out and asked us to play, and it was like cool. So we'll play with this. We'll open for this Toronto band, and it'll be kind of our last. It just worked out. It'll be our last hurrah. And yeah, like just to skip to the punchline, basically, we show up for the venue and the place. We show up to the load in, and the place is locked. And it turns out they just didn't book it.
No. So who's they then? So were you working through a booking company?
No, it was just like a fully like DIY type.
And they just was a miscommunication between the time they booked you and all the way to when it closed, presumably.
I guess it was there was I think a or maybe they just didn't reach out to the owner. Like we knew the owner, so we called him from the parking lot, and we were basically like, can we do the show? Can we make this happen? And he was like, no. But the band who dropped the ball had the gall to ask if they could still fit in a rehearsal in the back.
Oh my God, I love that.
I guess they didn't want to waste their time.
Hell yeah. I don't blame them at all. No offense to this new marketplace. Businesses run into trouble, but I mean, it's not like it's easy to come from Toronto. Maybe they had a car, but it's still a bit of, it's a hike.
Sorry, I should clarify. I believe what happened was that the band didn't book
the band. Oh, fuck the band. Okay.
I don't think it was that the venue owner just like didn't write it down or something.
That's what I thought it was. Okay.
So I don't know.
The band was disorganized from Toronto.
I believe so. I'm
gonna bleep the whole thing before. Fuck that band.
Yeah, but so like, not the worst thing in the world, but it was just disappointing.
Of course, yeah, that's really disappointing, especially because one, for people who don't know, as much as even if you go see an artist live and it looks like they're David Bowie up there and crushing it, for sure they had some nerves before they went on. So we all have to get our nerves up before we go live. But also, it was going to be the last hurrah for you guys, and what a little just trickle instead of a waterfall. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It just went out with a whimper, basically.
So when ended up happening? Did you guys ever have any sort of show, or was it a bit of a handshake goodbye?
Yeah, we never played together again.
Damn. Well, that's still a bit of a bonding experience, I feel like, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It'll tie you together.
Yeah, I think I have one more weird one.
Sure, go for it. Hey, I'll take as many bad stories as you want.
It wasn't a bad gig. It was just sort of the weirdest, most surreal gig I've ever played. It was again like around that time. I think it was maybe like the fall before, and we were asked for some reason to play a charity dinner at a golf course.
I love your music, and it's not offensive in any way, but that's still not maybe the vibe for a golf course.
I fully agree, and you can imagine in high school, like the level of angst.
Oh yeah,
Energy was up, and but the best part, the opener was a hypnotist. So
that's incredible.
Picture it's like a big kind of event space, basically. Yeah. Like a conference hall almost kind of thing, and it's like there are it's like a sit down dinner for donors, I guess, and
pretty hoity-toity, it sounds like These
Like,
golf course banquets can get they're nice. They're rented out for weddings and they're all that stuff. So
yeah, it was. I think it was for Children's Aid Society, which was, like, shout out to them.
well, yeah, good calls. Yeah.
Good cause for sure. But it was mostly just how sort of surreal it was to be like blasting everybody just like seated, um, having like a turkey dinner. And oh, so the thing with the hypnotist though was that he had a bio that he wanted to have read before he went on, and for some reason I was nominated to do it, and so again, for whatever reason, who knows, the guy who was running the sound decided like halfway through the bio that he was going to put on this like really gnarly like flanger effect on my voice. So I was like unintelligible, and
Oh my God. Okay, hold on. Can I stop this for a second? A lot of the people listening to this are probably musicians or music, adjacent. They know what flanger is. Can we describe flanger for people?
um
I know it's a little tough, but
like,
it's a pedal, it's an effect that people use.
yeah, it's like, imagine like running your voice through like a block of jello. Is
Yes, it makes it this very like it's sort of changing the what is it? The peak of the frequency as it goes across the board. So it's
Mhm.
makes your voice sound like it's traveling through a radio, kind of like that. It's
Yeah,
at like the beginning of Spirit of the Radio, the guitar effects, right? It probably has flanger on that, I think, by
yeah,
Rush.
but it's not so great for making yourself feel like a banquet hall.
No, at a golf course.
Of course. So yeah, so there's like 100 people just watching me just do this, and then the hypnotist does his thing. I think he was
Does his thing.
hypnotist. But so then we go on after the hypnotist, and say his name was like Dave or something. I thought I had this sick line that I was gonna open with. I was like, Dave put you to sleep, now we're gonna wake you up. And I thought it was so sick, but it was just like crickets.
Well, he did. He put them to sleep. He's a hypnotist.
And I think somebody after said it was kind of like rude that I sort of insinuated that the
It
hip
was boring.
ring, but it's like
No, who doesn't get that? That's the classic hypnotist thing. You put them to sleep or you make them cluck like a chicken or something.
yeah. So and then we just had to like launch into our like really kind of adolescent
Yeah.
like rock music, and
Yeah.
but I mean we got a free dinner, and we got $100, I think, split four ways.
Okay. High school, $100. That's big money.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, I believe you referenced this to me when we were talking before this interview, but you listened to the Barbecue Pope episode, and at one point in that episode, Sean, who was the guest,
Mhm.
discusses making music in high school and elementary school and what you would write about.
Yeah.
You are in that same position, so I'm very curious. Was it a bit of a mom doesn't understand situation, or
That's such a good and hard question. Um, I don't know what it
like
was.
what was big in high school for you? Was Lord of the Rings huge? Frodo songs?
I think it was a weird, just like mashup of influences. There was like, like a huge Radiohead fan. That
Of
was,
course.
there was
That
like,
hasn't left you, but that's been a positive influence, I would say.
yeah, but and then there was like Tool and Rush, and all kinds of just very, um, we were just playing fast and loud and just like really riffy.
Leaning complex too. All of those bands, or most of those bands,
Yeah.
they are within the wide highway of mainstream rock, but they're at the edges where they're trying different things. I feel like
Yeah, it's different things that require a level of like sophistication,
patience,
and
sophistication. Yeah.
maybe we were still developing. I still, it was a lot of fun. Like it was really really a lot of fun, but um yeah, I don't
Well,
know.
no, no,
Yeah.
that's good. Bouncing off of that, very fun is a good thing. And well, speaking of which, I want to. I guess the bad times are The bad times are always easier for us to think about because they're also better stories between everybody listening.
Mhm.
But what is your best gig? I'm
Mm.
very curious about the opposite.
Um, yes, and so I think I would have to choose actually the first Bats of Paradise gig. And I'm not just saying that because you put that together.
I need a what's a suck up alert or something. I gotta have a little bell or something. I'm totally joking. For the people listening, I was the one who I believe referencing the gig at the Burdock.
Mhm.
This was a terrible time to ask a question. He just took a glass drink of water. Was it the Burdock gig?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yes. So I was the one who put that together with my band, but it's because I was such a massive fan of your music already. I was like, it's a no-brainer. I have to. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think I kind of mentioned earlier that I had taken a long time off, and that was like partly because of COVID, but um, not entirely because of COVID. Like just focusing on school and things. And I think there was a period of, I think it had been 5 years since I performed live before that show, and I know Mark also took several years off as well. So um, yeah, it just and it's something that I just missed it so much. It was like it felt like there was something um that I was missing out on this thing. Like everybody else was kind of out there, you know, plying their trade, and I wasn't for whatever reason. And it felt so good to think that like and there was a part of me that maybe after so long thought like maybe I couldn't, or maybe like it was not something I was supposed to be doing. But then just getting back on the stage and doing it and having it be like that was a really good turnout too, and it
It was a fantastic turnout.
so nice to play to a full room and have that kind of reception and just feel like it just felt like, oh, we're back.
There was a bit of a homecoming feeling, despite the fact that it was your first one in a while. That's sort of the context. And for people who haven't been to the Burdock, it was a great spot before the pandemic, but I believe there was a bit of a transition around the time of the pandemic where they also changed the layout of it. I had never actually been to the pre-pandemic layout. Same with the Cameron House,
Yeah.
for those keeping score. But all this to say, the Burdock is really I don't know how you would describe it. It's fancy in a, dare I say, chalet kind of way, to
Maybe.
get all Canadian about it. I don't know. I just feel like there's a little wine bar at the back where they've got the really fancy wines where it's more like juice. And then it's sort of like two hallways split in half, and on the right is where people can sit down and have a dinner and order stuff, and on the left is the entire hall that faces the stage, the little stage. And I'm not sure why I decided to give a 3-page description of the Burdock, but it's a lovely little spot, I guess. And my point, I guess, was going to be, it's maybe not the place you would expect the music that you are describing to be played, and yet it worked incredibly well and was full in a really nice way where it seemed like people weren't just there for the dates, people came to see our music,
Mhm. Yeah.
which was very nice.
Yeah.
And it all sounded great. And Mount Mural was the third act on that
Yes.
lineup, who are amazing. Um, and I think maybe future guests at some point. But uh, again, I'm wasting so much of your time. I would love to hear what you think your best song is. That's usually where we do the little roller coaster top, and then we'll go down.
Yeah. So the best song again, I should have maybe mentioned earlier that we only have 6 songs out there. So
I love that you still decided to come on and be like, fuck the
yeah.
1/6 of our discography.
Um, so yeah, like it's a small pool to choose from, but and we are definitely excited about the new stuff we're working on. But of
Which
this,
I was going to get to at some point, but yeah.
of the stuff that's currently available, I would have to choose song Overwrite, which is the last song on the EP. And I think for a lot of those reasons that we talked about earlier, like in terms of a fulfilling collaboration, it was the one that really just felt like the most that song um sort of was more than the sum of both of us in a way. Credit to Mark for it was his the end part was kind of there's kind of like this extended outro thing, and that idea, which is a very it's like a rhythmic hook. Um, that was his idea, and he had that very early on, and so that was another one of those ones that was kind of early in the mix. Um, and
Which
then,
is very unique because I feel like everybody's used to melodic hooks, right? Rhythmic hook is very different.
hmm, yeah, and I thought it was so cool. Once I learned how to count it, and um, it was it was that kind of like mind meld or like broken telephone type of thing, where we would sort of work together on on a verse or something, and then like I would sing something, and then he would hear it through like a cell phone recording, and sort of refine that into lyrical idea, and then I would kind of have to sort of tweak it again for my own sort of voice and stuff, for the final product. And yeah, it just felt like it was the most sort of seamless instance of that kind of collaboration on the
Would
album.
would you ever consider, from my own curiosity, this could even just be cut out, but would you ever consider releasing like I know Taylor Swift did this, and I'm truly not making a joke. It's a good idea for people who care, but like voice memos and stuff that she passed back and forth with other musicians. And this was a long time ago. I was in a friend's car, 1989. That album had just come out, so I was hearing these voice memos or whatever. And it's it's cool that she wanted to include that, and I would love that for bands that I really like. So I'm curious if you even still have those files, and if that's something that you, one, as a fan of other bands, like when they do it, and two, would you ever consider doing it?
Um, I've never thought about that.
Hmm.
It is cool though. Like, I know when there was that whole like Radiohead OK Computer leak thing, uh,
Hmm.
the mini discs, and hearing sort of the songs in their sort of infant, stage. Yeah, it was really cool. I don't know. I would have to listen to them again, I would say, but
You should listen to them again, and I feel like that would my speaking for myself, maybe even if I listened to original demos, I'd feel maybe a little bit nervous, like, oh, well, I put out the finished version because I want that to be the finished version that people hear. But at the same time, I think just as a fan, people love that stuff. People love to hear or see or whatever the building blocks of what became this thing. Like, I would be so curious to see how you to even hear the demos of the Hornet's Nest, song. Um, but yeah, so yeah, okay, that's very nice that the Burdock gig was your favorite gig, uh, and that you've got the favorite song that ended your album. I feel like that's a really good idea, and not everybody will choose that. Sometimes it's a little bit of a Hotel California situation where they actually lead with their
mhm.
best or most famous song, and it just sort of peters out.
Mhm.
I don't think that's the case at all with your EP. Part of it is due to length. 6 songs is fantastic, um, but that also means that if there's a negative,
Yeah,
it's a sixth of your album.
yeah.
So I'm very curious what you chose for worst song. Ding ding ding.
Worst song.
Yes,
So yeah, I again, we
you're
wanted.
already in like an apologetic tone. I love it. It's like, again, I just want people to remember.
Yeah, I don't want to, if this is anybody's favorite track. Uh, yeah, but it's so I think in terms of songs that didn't quite hit the mark, for what we had, how we didn't envision them, I would say it was Life on TV, which is the fourth song, I think.
Hmm,
Um, if I had to pick one, I want to,
you do.
fulfill the assignment.
Yeah, yeah.
If the people really want blood, I can. I can dig up my defunct, my very short-lived FL Studio SoundCloud
Oh hell yeah.
project, which preceded Bicyclops. And yeah, anyway.
We do. We want blood. There's blood in the water. We're Jaws. We're all Jaws.
Okay.
I am Spartacus, except it's Jaws, and all the sharks raise their fin.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, well, I can find that, I'm sure. But um if yeah, so again, I don't think it's a bad song, but
No, of course not, because you released it. Like,
yeah,
of course, everybody I'm asking who comes up with their song, you've released it. You must have liked. There's a version of you that liked it. Let's put it that way.
definitely. Yeah. I think it's just it was the one where the songwriting, like part of how we wanted to approach this band was that um we wanted it to be very the arrangements to sort of stand on their own, and as opposed to something like Bicyclops, which is very much constructed sort of in the box, so to speak, like in the DAW. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
whereas we wanted this to be sort of like a full package, as
For the
just like
people who don't know, what is DAW?
a digital audio workstation. Just
So
like
it's like the little box that people need to plug either into sometimes their instruments or sometimes the recording uh, technology into their laptop or into whatever tech bigger system they're working on. Is that correct?
yes, absolutely.
Okay, I'm just making sure people understand.
Yeah, sorry. It's the
No apology necessary.
fancy technology where you press the button and the song comes out.
Exactly.
I feel like that was the discourse like 30 years ago, but
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
um but yeah, so we wanted the arrangements to sort of stand on their own, and this was the one song where we felt like we were um trying to kind of come up, we had like an arc that we were trying to hit, and um we kind of got the mixes back and realized that we still weren't quite there, basically. So we were trying things
I
in
want to stop you there. What does that mean? Why weren't you there?
um I think like the idea was that we had, again, back to this sort of like contrast idea. In that song, it's very clear, I think, that there's sort of a very like driving, almost mechanical, kind of claustrophobic sort of verse section, and then it sort of pivots into the sort of bigger, open, sort of a little bit more like anthemic.
Mm-hmm.
And we had this sort of vision of how that was gonna sound, and we were just finding we weren't kind of getting that, I guess, that contrast that we wanted, and it wasn't quite flowing. And it was like maybe we needed I think part of it was like, oh, we'll always, like, when we do this for real, like the bass will be like really big and really, you know, really driving, and we just kind of took that for granted that we could just get that in the mix. And
Mm-hmm.
um so we ended up going back and forth with Jace Lasik, who was mixing it. And so we
Or
were,
create a little Jason Lasik sound or something.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He did a great job, but it was totally our thing. We were just like, can you try like trying different like distortion effects and trying different like turning things up, turning things down,
Mm-hmm.
and just doing that by email is not how you like want to be.
No.
It's not the most inspiring
It
way.
turns what could be a day into a week, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the issue, I think. But on the other hand, like, I think, like, personally, some of my more interesting guitar playing is on that, so I like it for that reason. um and there's yeah, maybe,
The
maybe we're
worst songs that are chosen are never actually bad songs. It's always just a way to get into the baggage of the artist.
very clever.
Yeah. This is gotcha journalism. Uh, Well, do you have anything more to say about any of it? Your best, best song, air quotes, worst song, air quotes. Would you like to say anything about the music you have coming up? I mean, I guess do you have a ballpark? I asked some of the guests this. You don't need to, between you and I could cut this out or whatever. Do you have a ballpark time for when more music will come out, even a single?
Um, Not really, unfortunately.
Oh, well, that's okay.
Like the stuff is getting queued up, but I think I mean part of it for me is just
Isn't
school.
it location as well, right? You're both in different spots.
Yeah, so Mark is in Peterborough, and it's tough for us to just get into the same room, and I'm hoping to finish my degree, like do my defense and everything by
Mhm.
the end of this year. So and that's going to be like a mad sprint, I think.
Of course, that's its own podcast.
Yeah. So nothing firm. I would love to get something out by the end of this year, like one song, but it really just there's a lot of moving pieces right now, but
Fair
uh,
enough.
we're very much still working on it every single week. Like we're still getting together and talking about it, and it's yeah, I think we are going to try to focus on performing a little bit in the meantime.
Well, I was just going to ask about that. This just so you can do the math in your head. This should come out maybe mid-July is kind of what I'm expecting. So let's say this comes out mid-July. What shows have you got coming out past that,
Um,
if anything?
yeah, I think it should be announced by then.
Okay. You can always let me know if it falls through and I can edit this out or whatever. But
So we're playing actually the Monarch
oh,
uh
cool.
Tavern again on August 10th with a band called Soft Set and a band from Montreal called Empress of Nothing, I think.
Good names.
Yeah. And that's the only one currently lined up.
Are the bands, you know, adjacent to the sounds that you guys have, I would say? Or
Uh,
what?
yeah, I haven't done too deep a dive, but I think they're in that sort of dream pop, sort of shoegaze, so a little bit more leaning in towards that sort of
Instead of riffy indie rock stuff.
yeah. But
Yes.
I think there's the sort of an aesthetic through line there.
Well, not to mention, I think people like audiences, they wouldn't want the exact same kind of band 3 or 4 in a row, right? You want complementary overlapping bands.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. It was great to have you. I was so curious about your music. I love the EP, you know that. Um, if you wouldn't mind, I've had past guests do this. Please introduce the worst air quotes song. Basically, just say the name of the song, say the band name again. You could say your name, and thank you very much.
um, I'm Phil Johnston from Bats of Paradise, and this is Life on TV.
If I start, I lose. Sweep me like a curtain all around you. What's another guilty pleasure? A new date on the calendar. A predictable evening so soon. I am a kid sighting down my gun. I know not what I do to you. Would you lift it?